He's Jack,
He's Jace.
and we're gonna ramble for another 5 to 10 minutes.
Uh, Rambling once again about character, as we have done for the last couple of episodes. And I hear you've got a new character for our game.
Yes, so I'm thinking about this Necromancer, being able to summon undead, twisting life forces around, um, and their whole thing is for each person they reanimate, they're gonna take a body part as a trophy. What do you think?
Yeah, we're playing Call of Cthulhu. And therein lies the problem. Sometimes you come to the table, you've got this great idea, and obviously that's a very exaggerated example, but it happens. So sometimes games and stories that you and your players are telling and sharing in, and there's this idea you really, really want to do, and you just want to crowbar it in as much as possible, and especially in a game like Call of Cthulhu, where you're playing a normal person, or playing a wizard in a game of cyberpunk, or a futuristic cyborg warrior in Forgotten Realms D&D game. And sometimes your idea just won't work. But
I was just gonna mention cowboy in a samurai game, even though technically they existed at the same time, but like that's neither here nor there.
but before we started recording, you mentioned about the caveat, and you actually came up with a really good example.
Sometimes, even if you're somewhat married to an idea, sometimes it requires a little out of the box thinking. The caveat I brought up was very much similar to what I brought up in Necromancer, but the idea was cyberpunk. And then I mentioned you could take inspiration from Herbert Wesker's Reanimator. And now all of a sudden you have a Necromancer that fits within the cyberpunk setting.
I don't think that's certainly coming at it, but being prepared to alter those original ideas, not to go in saying, no, I'm definitely going to be using magic in a grim future of neon lights and perpetual heavy rain. It's knowing where you need to make those sacrifices, and you might need to make things a little more in line with the game that you're playing in, or the game that you're running, just to make those kind of little outside aspects fit. But
Absolutely. Like, and I say that goes not only with character concept, like, oh, I want to play this type of character, but it also comes down to like personality stuff. Not all character personalities are gonna gel with a specific group of people either. You need to be adaptable to all things. Don't just I'm going to play this
yeah,
stereotypical rogue I'm going to steal from people. Realize that there add nuance to things and be willing to adapt.
yes, and I think that's something. I think if you're watching this and you're potentially about to go into your first game, you're not too sure of the character you want to do, it's really natural to do the hardened, battle worn lone wolf. But remember, you're playing with a group. Really difficult to do a lone wolf as part of a group of players who are also playing characters, and you create this adventuring band or a group of edge runners if you're playing cyberpunk or whatever your setting is, or investigators with Call of Cthulhu. And I think it's one of those things to always ask yourself in that process of why, even if it's something that you'll cover in the story, why would my character sign up with a group of fellow adventurers or heroes or whatever?
And I'm going to echo something that I'm pretty sure everybody within this space has heard 10,000 times. Session zero, Session 0 for those in the back.
Absolutely, and it's where you cover those themes and those kind of ideas. So GMs, if you're not doing a session 0, even if you've played a game with a group of players for decades, you know your players intimately, you don't need to go through lines and veils. Still, just having 20 minutes and saying, "This is what I'm looking at running. Anyone got any ideas?"
I mean, as a personal example for both of us, for the Hunter game that you are a part of, didn't you go through like 3 different character concepts? Well,
Oh yeah, and then of course I didn't use any of them. It was ultimately in the final game. So yeah, firstly, kind of flirting with an idea of just ripping off John Constantine from Hellblazer, and the TV series with Matt Ryan, less so the Keanu Reeves version. And that I thought that was a really cool idea. It's this guy who's sort of like on this walking this path between redemption and damnation, and then ultimately, just with the game that we ended up being part of, just wasn't a place for a character like that. So be prepared. There will be a time when you can play the character that you come up with, and you really want to kind of go into that and go, I really want to play that character. Don't waste them on a game they're not suited for. If they don't get sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, because you'll ruin not only your own experience, but you'll come out a little jaded to that character, which isn't really fair to your original idea that got you super excited to play to begin with, and it might very well, in worst case scenario, damage a group.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said as well. If you do agree on something, then going a different route, then you can make that character it can lead somewhat to main character syndrome. If you take, for example, The Hobbit, it's classic story. But the reason that Bilbo is the standout character from a group of dwarves is that he is not one of the dwarves. He's a very homely type character who never dreamed of adventure, who ends up going on an adventure. Suddenly you've got that fish out of water, and he is the focal point character. And great for a story, adequate at best for a movie, but for a game where you're sharing the space with other players, it's best to let everybody have their moment in the spotlight and not try and overshadow it by being what is clearly being set up as something of a main character in that usual narrative space. And with that, he's Jace.
And he's Jack.
We'll see you next time.
Care.
Peace out.